Alexis.
Hey, Drew.
How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. We just got finished with Neil Crofts.
Yes.
Who's the CEO and founder of Holos. Make sure I say that right. Change is easy is their tagline.
That's
Change
right.
is easy. And I came across a model on leadership, and specifically around ownership and autonomy. And it was really clear when I saw it. I was like, man, that is exactly what we're working through as a leadership team.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was very timely. And so he came in and he talked about the model. We had a really good discussion, and the time flew by.
It did.
For me, and I took a lot away. And so I want to make sure I'll use some of these points. Mm-hmm. But I'd really encourage you to take a listen to it. It's he's based in the UK, and he talked about a lot of the research that he's done and how he's helped different organizations through this model.
Yeah. No, it was pretty. There was a moment there where I just felt like I was just staring into the abyss because I was just really enthralled with what was going on.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the model, I'm not going to lie. The first few times I looked at it, I was like, what is happening? What is going on? You sent me a video a little bit ago, and I had to watch it about 5 times to really sink my teeth into it. But Neil did a really great job of going through. And kind of speaking to some of the nuances that's mentioned on it.
Yeah.
And it was really fitting. It was really fitting to what we're doing right now.
It really is in a lot of ways.
Ties into also what Aaron spoke about as well. Mm-hmm. Like when we think about pressure.
Yeah, pressure. Yeah. And it can apply to individuals. It can apply to leaders. It can apply to people that lead different portions of the organization. There's a lot of takeaways for sure.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you get a chance to listen.
Yeah. Oh, and be sure to stay to the very end because there's a competition between us.
It's worth the time.
It is.
All right, folks, listen up. This is Neil Crofts. Welcome. Alexis, we're here with Neil from Holos in the UK. And Neil, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to meet with us. I know you got a lot going on. Neil's the CEO of the company. And I ran across a model of his that we're going to go through today. And we're going to spend the majority of time just on this model. I thought it was that good. And it just hits right in the sweet spot of what we're trying to do in our company around ownership and autonomy. And so we're going to get into that model. But Neil, before we do, you want to talk a little bit about what your company does, just so people have a reference of even maybe what you did before you started the company, but anything that you may want to talk about?
Sure. So 20 years ago, I was working for an internet consultancy called Razorfish during the dot-com boom. Some people may have heard of that. Mm-hmm. And it became very clear that it really didn't matter how good the technology was that we delivered to our clients. If they didn't have a culture that was adapted to a digital environment, it didn't add value. Mm-hmm. And so I became kind of obsessed with the question of how do you intentionally create the kind of culture that leads to sustained success in a digital environment. And I've really been pursuing that question ever since. And the question's changed slightly. So now it's how do you intentionally create the kind of culture that leads to sustained success in a disrupted environment? Because digital isn't the only disruptor.
Sure.
So there's aging, there's also sustainability and decarbonization. There is digitization, obviously. There's the pandemic. So there's plenty of disruptors going on. And so the question remains, how do you do that? I'm now on to my 4th book on the subject. Holos has been going since 2014. And we basically help companies create that kind of culture. So we're working with some big names that you'll have heard of. And we work with leaders typically and teams to help them do that, help them make those adjustments.
Well, I like your tagline, change is easy, because it certainly doesn't feel easy sometimes. But we'll get into that. And why? Just out of curiosity, why that tagline?
Well, so there's a theory that you kind of need to have a provocative statement somewhere, and so we felt that kind of encapsulates what we do. It's a really interesting point. It's a really interesting question about that, because people, if you ask people, they say, "Well, change is difficult." That's typically what people say, and yet we do changes all the time that we're really into. So people get married, they move house, they have kids. Some of those are easy, some of them are difficult. But actually, if you do them the right way, if you plan, if you're engaged, if you're committed, those changes can be pretty easy. And so these are big changes, big life changes, but actually they can still be pretty easy. So the question is, how do you then apply that to organizational contexts? And what we know is that any transformation, the biggest transformation in the world, right to the smallest transformation, happens at the habit level. So actually, it's only about changing habits. And some habits can be quite sticky. But again, with the right preparation, the right planning, the right motivation, we can change habits. So if you're talking a 1 million person organization, want to completely change direction, it's going to come down to habits, and it's going to start with the habits of leaders. So that's the essence.
Oh, that's fantastic. We were talking about individual habits with a guest that we had, Aaron. And even individual habits can sometimes be challenging, right? But it's a series of habits that create change, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so there's an interesting bit in there as well, which is that the changing the habit itself is quite easy. The bit that's hard is the decision. So if I'm going to make a decision to, do more exercise or eat different food or whatever it is, the reality is that I prevaricate. I put off making the decision. But if I do make the decision, if I actually make that commitment and I say, no, from Monday this is going to be different, and I buy different stuff and I do different stuff, the change has already happened.
What do you see about the? Because I feel like I agree with you. Like that first step of just doing it, right?
Yeah, that's the hard.
But there's also, it seems like the hard part is sustaining it, right? Do you find that to be true? Like once you start a habit, I just think, daily habits, like for myself or whatever.
Being consistent.
Or same thing with a leader who's like, all right, I'm going to change the way that I lead. Yeah. And the first few days might be easy. And then after that, you get stressed and your boss calls you and you're like, and all of a sudden you change. Yeah.
So there's two big things here. Yeah. The first one is that when we're changing, we need to cut ourselves some slack when we're changing any habit. It's okay to get it wrong. What happens is that you want to bring the awareness of that, how you're doing to before the point of decision making. So I decide that I want to change a habit, and I'm becoming aware that I want to change that habit. So now, when the moment occurs, do I go left or right? Do I do what I've always done, or do I do the new thing? And probably the first few times, exactly as you're saying, I'll get it right because it's in my mind and I'm thinking about it. And then of course I'm going to mess up. Of course I am. And actually what I've got to do is give myself permission to mess up. That's fine. And just continue to make the effort to bring the awareness before the point of decision making. So that when I'm faced with that moment of choice, I'm okay to go the right way. I'm okay to go the way I want to go.
It also kind of reminds me of like accountability partners.
Or
having someone that can kind of keep you accountable of that new change, that new decision that you're making.
Anything like that. And writing it down, making it public, all of those things really help. So particularly for team leaders, making a public commitment to your team that you're going to behave in a different way. That helps.
Yeah, I'm not going to stress over the little things, team. And then the next day you're like, or whatever.
So that was the other bit. So the other bit is triggering. So we're all vulnerable to being emotionally triggered by stuff, and particularly by stress. So when we're overloaded, when we're overwhelmed, when we're hungry, when we're tired, we're going to be triggered. And
yes to all of those. Yes
but
to all
we're
of
not
those.
going to be the best version of ourselves.
Right.
So the best So actually, part of the preparation for change is to make sure that we're in a good space. Get some of the distractions out of the way. One of the things that we say to leaders is, part of your responsibility is to create bandwidth for yourself. You can't lead strategically if you're absolutely up against the wall the whole time. You can't think strategically, and you can't lead strategically if you can't think strategically. So delegating stuff, creating bandwidth so that you've got the time to think strategically, and the time and the energy and to resist the triggering, so that you can stay on message.
Yeah, that's so true.
Absolutely.
That's so true. Which gets us to your model.
It does. I was just about to say that.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's pull up the model real quick.
Yeah, there it is.
So Neil, what I thought we would do, and again, I came across this and I started seeing, I saw a little video on this and I'm like, man, this is so like on point to how we're thinking about the organization. And it's so important whenever we talk to, even when we talk to team leads on the podcast or where I'm in stores and I'm talking to leaders, I can pinpoint where we are on this chart inside of a store. And it's a microcosm, again, of the change we're going through. So, Neil, what I thought you could do is let's just spend a few minutes and let you just describe what we're looking at, and then we'll have a little bit of a dialogue about it.
Fabulous. Okay. So first of all, the model is called Sustained Success because sustained success is what we're trying to create. We don't want boom and bust. We don't want short-term success. We want sustained success. And we want to sustain success for all of the stakeholders. So whether it's for employees or for leaders or for teams, the organization, for customers, for other stakeholders, what we're trying to create is sustained success all round. So that's the first thing. The fundamental of the model is these four organizational states you see on the left. So fix, reliability, ownership, and adaptability. And in the conventional world, so what we define by conventional is businesses that could be successful simply by being reliable. So, in Walmart's case, if you can simply have stuff in store, have people buy it, you can be reliable. And probably up until 10 years ago, Walmart and other organizations could really be successful just by doing what they said they were going to do. That's kind of all you needed to do. That's the conventional world. And then what's happened in the last 10 years, or maybe a little bit more, is that this post-conventional world has emerged, where actually, if all you're doing is managing reliability, you're effectively managing decline because the rest of the world is overtaking you. And what post-conventional organizations do is they disrupt themselves before someone else does it to them. So Apple is probably the inventor of post-conventional. They invented the desktop computer, and it was Apple that disrupted the desktop computer with the laptop computer. And it was Apple that disrupted the laptop computer with the smartphone and the tablet, and so on. So, and not only do post-conventional businesses disrupt themselves, they also disrupt other organizations around them. So you've got this new generation of businesses, post-conventional businesses, going around disrupting stuff. If you don't do the disruption, if Walmart doesn't disrupt itself before, someone else is going to do it to you. That's what's happening. So then if we go through those first two organizational states, fix is the state where the organization is under stress, where maybe something's gone wrong, or maybe the company's just not being reliable. And basically everyone's running around with their hair on fire, trying to fix things. And you can see on the right-hand side, there is no leadership bandwidth. I talked earlier about the importance of leadership bandwidth.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Where leaders have no bandwidth and are not able to think strategically, they are going to focus on goals and tasks. And the irony of just focusing on goals and tasks is it perpetuates that state of fix. So you end up, in a stressed state, and you can see on the right-hand column over there that the sustainability of being in that state of fix is low. So, if you remain in that state of fix for long, things go wrong. And that's for you as an individual, for teams,
right.
for whole companies. For me, if I'm as an individual, if I'm in a state of crisis for a long time, I'm going to end up getting sick or something's going to go wrong.
Right.
If a team is in a state of fix for a long time, people are going to leave. There's going to be all sorts of stuff that goes wrong. Or if an organization's in a state, so we don't want to stay in that state of fix. But in our post-conventional world, reliability is not enough. We need to move beyond reliability. And the step beyond reliability, you can see that there's a slightly thicker line between ownership and reliability. Mm-hmm. And that step between ownership and reliability is a huge cultural shift. Ownership is about everyone feeling that sense of responsibility and acting in the best, knowing what the company's priorities are, knowing what's required, and taking decisions in order to get there. So, anyone, they can see stuff that needs to be kept reliable, and they can manage that situation and they can keep it reliable. Anyone in the organization, and this is the ownership bit, anyone in the organization can see stuff that needs to change, and they can use leadership skills to create that change. And that's the crucial bit, is this shift from managing and obeying to leading and following and managing. 3 skills: leadership, management, and followership. So that's the crucial bit with that. And in the words in there, it says culturally risk-free. Now that's a big claim. But what you get when you get that sense of ownership in the organization, you get a situation where everyone can raise those concerns. So you're mitigating cultural risks in the organization.
One of the things, Neil, just for those that are listening, how this resonates to me is take an individual, take a team, take a store, whatever type of operation you could be running, distribution center, and I've seen it all across the company, even outside the company. So think of it this way. So fix is to your point, the building's on fire, your team's on fire, you're on fire, right? There's things that you just got, and there's times and places, Neil, where that happens, right? Think through the pandemic. There's been a lot of fixing opportunities where you just had to react and you had to fix. But at some point, you want to get reliable. And to me, reliable is that you're executing processes, you're executing habits, you're executing a routine. We talk about some of the best store managers that we have on here, Neil. We have the managers that win Store of the Year on the podcast. They all talk about the same thing. It's about Groundhog Day. Mm-hmm. It's about being to where every day I know what's going to happen. I'm following it up on it, and it is a list of a routine or habits that I execute. So that's kind of being on process, right? And then the next one is, hey, you've established and earned the right to show that you're now going to create ownership at all different levels. And there's going to be times where you're going to deviate from those processes. There are going to be times where you deviate from those routines to take care of a customer, to take care of a situation that you may be dealing with as a team. But there's times where you're going to deviate from those individual process and reliability. If you try to jump straight from fix to ownership, what you find yourself in is just a whole lot more fix, right? You're deviating from stuff that's not in routine, and so you're constantly going back into fix. And so that's one of those. That's why I love the model, is that you build upon it. And the other thing I think is what's interesting, Neil, that you said is, as leaders, great leaders can flex across that whole model at any given time. There are times when, hey, something happens and I'm in fix mode. Think about the pandemic and all of the variability in our business. Then there's times where it's like I'm really driving the reliability aspect of it, which is a routine, it's discipline, it's processes, it's those kind of things. And then there's also times where there's certain situations where I'm going to flex up and I'm going to move into this ownership space of allowing the team to feel like they own something and they're making decisions that may be contrary to even the routine, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's an interesting, it's a skill. And I find us sometimes, I find leaders feel like it has to be all or nothing. Like, I'm all about ownership. Well, yes, you're all about it, but you have to have routines. You have to have a fixed business. You have to have routines in places. And then you flex up to ownership. Do you find that, like, whether it's, at a team level, that some people either progress too fast or even too slow, they may stay at the reliability and they never get to ownership?
No, 100%. So you're absolutely right. Reliability gets you the permission to do the adaptability stuff. Yep. You've got to have the basics right. And I think I want to add in the word opportunity. So you need to flex. You need to have that flex and that leadership space and that ownership space also when there are opportunities. There's a new market to enter, or a new product, or a new category, or whatever. And that ability, very specifically, that ability to experiment and try stuff out, where failure isn't important. What you're looking for is learning and clarity. So, let's try this. Let's try a new process. Let's try a new way of doing this. Let's see what the results are. Let's iterate from there and maybe create a new process. But absolutely. So let's make sure we get the reliability right first. And then once we've got that reliability, don't get sucked into, and the on the one hand, you've got the vulnerability thing of trying new stuff, which if someone is really, really into their habits, trying new stuff can be pretty scary.
Yeah.
And getting other people to try new stuff with you when you don't know what the outcome is going to be, makes you feel vulnerable. So a lot of times it's actually a resistance to trying new stuff because of that vulnerability. What happens if it doesn't work? So I think self-perception is really important here. But again, it comes back to habits, and so therefore, if there's always a balance. There's always a balance between courage and skill when you're doing something new. When you have no skill, it takes a great deal of courage to try something out. If you've got some skill, it takes less courage. If I were to, I don't know anything about you, but if I were to put you on a motorbike on a racetrack, it might take a great deal of courage for you to go fast around that racetrack on a motorbike. But if you've got some training and you're wearing the right kit and all the rest of it, then it takes less courage to do the same thing. And so part of it, there's a big thing here which is about skill, and that sort of self-awareness and brand thing, and overcoming that and getting past that vulnerability is key in that.
Just so you know, I would start off really fast and only make it through the quarter of the track. That's who you're talking to, Neil.
I wouldn't even be able to get it started.
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah, I could do. I'm gonna go 100 miles an hour across it. And
Drew,
then,
what am I doing?
Yeah, quarter through the track, I'm into the wall.
No, this is fascinating because I think about, Drew, to exactly what you've said. I think people are really scared to venture out and do something that they're usually either not good at, or something that they haven't done often, or let's say the training maybe isn't there yet. We're still testing it. We're still working through some kinks through the development. And so I think sometimes we forget that we don't have to do this by ourselves.
Yep.
We're not alone. We can get people around us that are probably good at ownership, or lean into that adaptability and try to learn from each other, form this team of accountability.
That's right.
Alexis, I love that. When I was at school, I don't know what it was like for you guys, but when I was at school, collaboration had a different name. Do you know what they called it?
Ooh,
teamwork.
No, they called it cheating.
Oh, cheating. Oh.
Or knowing your resources.
Yeah.
And isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
That, we were really told that collaboration was cheating, and then of course we come into the workplace, and really there's nothing that you have to do on your own. Actually, everything can be collaborative, and yet we've got to unlearn that lesson.
Yeah. So, no, you're absolutely right, because I feel like coming from a previous education, not expert, but in that space, you're absolutely right. And everyone feels like they have to do this on their own, or else people will not look at them like they are knowledgeable or experts in a space.
God, that's so true.
Yeah.
The other big deal in all of this is psychological safety. So, having a culture of psychological safety that makes it okay to be vulnerable, also makes it okay to experiment and try some of these things out, and to show off unfinished work. I mean, that's such a big deal. You can't collaborate with someone if you're not willing to show off unfinished work. So if you can't show off unfinished work, how do you collaborate? It doesn't work. You've got to be prepared to show stuff that's half done.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So on the just a couple more things on the model, and then I have another question for you. But what advice would you have somebody that maybe, let's do each one just real quick. So I'm in a Fixit mode, right? And again, I just keep going back to, from a pandemic perspective, we all find ourselves in this Fixit mode, right? I mean, it's incredibly reactive, and you have to be, for us to be successful, not only as individuals, or not only as teams and as a company, but even as individuals. Like you're finding yourself in this very reactive mode because so much is changing around you. What advice would you give if you find yourself in that situation to graduate into reliability?
Okay, great. So you're in that fixed state. What you need is bandwidth. You need the ability to think. You need the ability to be strategic. So you've got to put the panic aside, and you've got to say, look, we're going to devote an hour or 2 hours or whatever you can to thinking our way out of this problem. We've had to band-aid everything just to get that time, but we're going to buy ourselves some time. So
that's so good.
You somehow you want to buy yourself that bandwidth to think your way out of the problem, and have, if you can have a couple of other people in the conversation and collaborate and figure it out together, so much the better.
Yeah, I think, from a practical standpoint, what I've found, and I've been in the Fixit mode many times in my career, and it's so hard, depending on the intensity of it. It is so hard to create that space, because sometimes you almost feel guilty creating the space, right? Because you have so much going on. You're like, oh, I don't want to create the space. I don't want to create. But what I found was, by doing so, it helps you actually get out of it, right? So it's actually the right thing for the team. And it could be as easy as, hey, I'm going to put myself in an office with a whiteboard, put on some music, and just tune out and think a little bit about where we're at and make notes. That's what I typically do, right? Now I spend an hour just in my mind thinking through, all right, where are we at? What are we doing? I got all this stuff to do. What's the top 3 things I need to get done? And really calm the world down a little bit. And then you walk out of the office and you go execute those 3 things. And even something as little as that on a daily basis will help. But a lot of times, especially in our stores where things are 24 hours a day, and it's running, you got all these people asking you all these things, it's hard to do. So you may have to do it at home before you come into the office. You may have to do it, maybe go to the coffee shop or go somewhere else. But take a little bit of time to just by yourself and think a little bit. Put on some music, like I said, make some notes, and you will find your intensity level go out, and you'll be actually way better for the team, right?
Yeah.
All right, now you're, from a reliability to ownership, that hurdle. And as you said, that was a big line on your model. So it's a bigger hurdle. Believe it or not, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to go from. What would be your advice to go from reliability to ownership and adaptability?
I think the real the first thing is to get the basics right. I said that already. Just make sure you've nailed all that. And you used the word processes, systems, whatever. Have the right systems and processes in place. You're going to need to buy yourself plenty of bandwidth to do that. So you need to be delegating stuff. You need to be creating space, but this time not just sort of tactical space. This is like strategic space, bigger space. And then I think the other bit here is, it depends where you are, but invest in leadership skill. Really take the time personally to think what's leadership about. What's leadership for me? How do I get? And the first person that you need to lead is yourself. How do I be the best version of myself as much of the time as possible? What am I really here for? What am I trying to achieve? What's my vision? What's my purpose? Why do I come to work? Get those sort of basic questions sorted out. What are my values? What do I stand for? What do I stand against? And then you need to ultimately all of those things need to align with the place you're working at. So does my personal vision and my team vision align with the organizational vision? That kind of has to end up being in that space. In the post-conventional world, you do need a vision. You need to know where you're trying to get to. You can't create ownership if people don't know where they're trying to get to. How could I give you ownership of something? I mean, I can't just say, okay, Drew, you own it now. You need to know what we're trying to achieve. So this is based on a military model, which in the British military is called mission command. And the idea was to delegate authority to the lowest possible level. And the way that you did it was by setting the vision, the overall goal, and basically saying you figure out how you achieve it. So the vision bit is really important. And what's important about a vision is that it is a destination. It's a clear destination that you will know if you've achieved it. So our vision as Holos is universal authentic leadership. We believe that the world will be a better place if all leadership is authentic. So will we know if we've achieved it? I mean, we probably won't achieve it in a lifetime, but will we know if we've achieved it? If all leadership is authentic, I think we'll know that. So it needs to be a destination, because it turns out that destinations are much easier to navigate towards. So if I was, I don't know, whereabouts are you guys?
We're in Arkansas.
We're in Arkansas. Okay, so if I were to leave the house here now and I wanted to get to Arkansas, I knew Arkansas was my destination, I could take decisions that would help me get there. I would get to the airport, I would get on the right plane, I would end up in Arkansas sometime. But if I leave my house not knowing that I'm going to Arkansas, I might go for a nice walk or a nice drive or a nice bike ride, but I'm not going to end up, or I'm very unlikely to end up in Arkansas. So having a vision, a place that you actually want to get to, is essential to creating ownership. You can't create ownership without vision.
I think what's really interesting, I didn't notice this until you started talking about it. I was kind of clued in on the left-hand side, but that leadership bandwidth is really interesting. And leadership bandwidth, again, in a world where you get measured by doing stuff, leadership bandwidth can feel a little uneasy because you got space. I remember being in one job at one point, and I was sitting there thinking, I remember like it was yesterday, I was in an office, I had a pretty big job at the time, and I was thinking, okay, I don't have anything to do for the next 2 hours. I should be doing something. So there's something, I was brand new to role. I'm like, there's something I'm not doing that I should be doing, right? Because you kind of get trained in your mind that you get measured on how much you personally do, even in a large leadership. But really, the success that you have is how much of that bandwidth that you have. Because the more bandwidth you have, the higher up you're up that chart, the better your team's performing. And by the way, the more the people that's working for you actually enjoy working for you, because now they have bandwidth, right? I think the key is what you do with that bandwidth is so important. And I do find us sometimes when we do create bandwidth, when you're in a world of action, people struggle with what do I do with that bandwidth? Because sometimes we just create more fixing with that bandwidth, or sometimes we just create more, processes with that bandwidth. Really, what you want that bandwidth to do is to push yourself forward and the team forward in large ways. And at some point we'll probably want to talk about that, but it's an interesting concept. As you move up, you have more and more bandwidth, should have more and more bandwidth, but what you do with that bandwidth is probably critical too.
So lovely, beautifully put. And what we see in most organizations is that busyness equates to status. So if you're not busy, you're not important. The busier you are, the more important you are. And so very often what happens is the more senior people are in organizations, the more overloaded they are. And we typically promote people because they're good at doing something.
That's right.
And people get their sense of self-worth from doing stuff that they're good at, not from doing stuff that they're bad at. And so they continue to do the operational skill when actually what they should be doing is leading and creating bandwidth. And so that's, all of that stuff is going on in the background. And then exactly to your point, you've got to have that, you've got to give yourself that strategic thought processes to think, well, okay, what next?
That's right.
And that's the crucial bit is, okay, which meeting do I need to create now? Which process do I need to create now that doesn't exist already?
Right.
What experiment do I need to conduct? What research do I need to do? It's answering those questions that are the ones that take you forward.
I've been thinking a lot about the model, our organization, especially folks in the store. And when I look at, from fix all the way up to adaptability, I think a lot of times we feel like we all have to be in the adaptability all the time, every single day, because that's what good leadership looks like. And I remember when I was in Chicago helping stand up all of the COVID testing sites, that entire room of 12 or 13 people, we were all across the board.
Yep, all over the place.
Oh, yeah. We had Kelvin who's like, this is our vision.
Right.
This is what we're doing.
Right.
And then we had all of us that were in red, and we were like, okay, we're
Right.
going to do this. We're going to fix this.
Right.
And then we started getting into those different levels where it all just made sense and it worked, and we were able to do a lot of great things. And so I think that sometimes we kind of cripple ourselves by thinking we have to be in a different
That's right.
level when we're just not there yet. But we have to make those small goals, those habits
Right.
to get us
And
there.
it's okay to be in the red.
Yeah.
It's okay to be in fix.
Thank you so much for saying that, Drew.
You just don't want to live in the fix,
Right.
But there's
Right.
definitely
That's spot on.
times. There's definite
Yeah.
times where that's exactly what needed in that moment.
Yeah.
What we'll do here, Neil, is this has been a great conversation. But we have a lot of leaders that are new to, I was about to say young to role, but new to role. There's tens and tens of thousands of individuals that have
Yeah.
taken on new responsibilities here in the last year or so. Any last advice that you may have for them as they either think through the model or just overall think about their leadership? Any last advice that you'd have for them?
Leadership is a fantastic life skill that will help you in everything that you do. And I would just say it is really worth investing time in. Read books, listen to podcasts, talk to people, experiment, but think of yourself as here's the thing. Here's the advice. Leadership is a choice, not an appointment. Make the choice.
Ooh.
Make the choice to lead.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. All right, man, that flew by.
Wow, it did.
Thank you so much, Neil. We know you are busy and leading the whole organization, and really impressed with the time today and all the different things that you're doing. And I think this is going to be a big help, Alexis, for a lot of folks. So thanks for your time.
Yes.
And I know it's at the end of the day for you,
Yes.
so hopefully you have some good plans tonight. But thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much.
Yep.
Really enjoyed it.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're doing a joke contest. We'll read a joke, and if you laugh, you get a point. If you make if anybody laughs, so even the person giving the joke or the person that received the joke.
Okay, but hold on. What if I say a joke and then you laugh first and then I laugh?
We both get points. So at the end of the day, it's whoever has the most points loses. You laugh, you lose, according to DJ.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right.
You ready? What's Forrest Gump's password? 1 Forrest 1.
How do you follow Will Smith into the snow? You follow the Fresh Prince. Yeah, I am bound and determined. Yeah. This is the look of determination.
Why did the coach go to the bank? To get his quarterback.
Where do young trees go to learn? Elementaries.
What did the accountant say while auditing a document? This is taxing.
dumb. Is this pool safe for diving? It depends. It deep ends, not depends.
Whew, that was a tough delivery.
Oh, wow.
Tough delivery. What does a nosy pepper do? Gets jalapeno business.
Stop. Also, I hope that you cut to his camera because there's a little bit of this.
It's funny
Jalapeno business.
when I first read it, I was like, jalapeno business. What's that? I had to say it slow, and I was like, okay.
So it's the head, the neck. Like when two vegans get into an argument, is it still called a beef?
Why is sand so optimistic?
Why?
It has a can-do attitude.
God. Okay, this is gonna be my last one. It's my finale, and I pretty much have to act it out too. So. What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet? Supplies!
That delivery didn't help at all. It didn't help at all.
Well, I feel like I lost a lot on this one. Dave's not even keeping count.